Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 88. On this episode of the podcast, Jenn interviews Christina Kinch on the subject of yoga as a method for integrating mind and body, a way to increase our consciousness of what our bodies are wanting to tell us. Christina sees yoga as a way to bridge spirituality and the body. I think I know just what she means. I tried Bikram yoga a couple of times. That's the yoga style that lasts for 90 minutes in a room heated to 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit with 40% humidity. That definitely helped me bridge spirituality in my body. I spent the last 75 minutes of each session repeating the following mantra: "Oh God, please make it stop. Oh God, please make it stop. Oh God, please make it stop."
Hey, this is Jenn, and you're listening to the Communication Diva Podcast, the podcast that hopes to help you improve your communication skills, to deepen your relationships with each other at work or at home, and that introduces you to inspiring people who use communication in interesting and informative ways. And there is a lot going on that is exciting, that's happening very soon in my world, and I'd like to share that with you at the end of this podcast. But for now, I'm going to turn you over to Christina Kinch, a family wellness consultant, a yoga therapist, an energy healer, and someone who is compassionate and intuitive and playful and is very interested in helping you to find joy and delight in your life. So here is Christina. Here I am in not so sunny downtown Vancouver, but we hope it's going to get nicer out today. And I'm here with Christina Kinch. Thanks for coming, Christina.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It was a little bit of time getting us together, but I'm glad that we managed to do it finally. I met Christina a few months ago now, I think, at a retreat that was about spiritual care, and I was really impressed with the session that you led us through with yoga and communicating with the body. And as soon as that was over, I thought, I have to introduce her to the community at Communication Diva. And so I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit about how you got into doing this work.
Sure. So I've practiced yoga for a number of years, probably, I guess, about 10 years. And I got into it initially, as many people do, as a physical practice. So just looking for a way to stretch and strengthen my body. And what I quickly learned, as many folks in the yoga community do, is that it was much more of a mind-body practice. So there was many more pieces that I could learn about myself, my inner life, about my spiritual life, and about my body that I didn't know that yoga would open up for me.
And so after you figured that beginning to figure that out, where did you go from there? How did you progress in deepening that knowledge?
So I worked for a number of years in mental health and child protection, and what I found in those communities was there's a lot of stress and a lot of need for healing, and I noticed that in many counseling sessions that people have, the focus is so much on the mind and just thinking our way into different ways of being, which is one approach, and it's a great approach. There's also other approaches like working with the body. And so when I worked with clients, I would often get them to connect to their bodies and listen to the wisdom of their bodies to help guide them use their intuition by hearing what their body was saying to them.
That sounds like a little bit like what my last guest was talking about with his work as a counselor and figuring out that the body does communicate very well. Can you talk a little bit more about how the body communicates to us?
Sure. Yeah. I think many of us, if we think of, say, a child and they have a stomach ache, we think, well, maybe they ate something, but maybe they're nervous about something. And sometimes it's easy to think of that with children, but we don't transfer it as much to ourselves and think, oh, I have a stomach ache. Am I nervous about something? Or did I eat something that doesn't work for me? Or my neck's feeling a little bit stiff. What's that about for me? So we can so easily go to, oh, I'll take an Advil. I have a bit of a headache, so I'll take an Advil. And although that can be great when we need to get on with our day and we don't want to be in pain, for chronic conditions, if we're getting headaches frequently, it's a good thing to ask ourselves, when am I getting headaches? What's happening in my life? What are the things that I'm thinking about when that's happening? And that can give us a bit of a doorway into understanding maybe some of those pieces in ourselves that we need to work on, that there's places for growth or places for healing. So pain is a great teacher. It can be frustrating and hard to deal with if we approach it in a frustrating and hard way, whereas if we look at it as something that can be a doorway and can teach us about ourselves and changes we need to make in our lives, it can be really life-giving.
So then where does the yoga part come in when in your work that you're doing and that you want to be doing more of in the near future? It looks like you've got the conversation about paying attention to the pain and where that is. And then what else do you do? What do you do with the yoga?
So any yoga class that I teach, I help people to listen deeply. So it's about being in the posture, but the posture is really just a vehicle for listening to what's going on in the body. So I'm never really that concerned about being the perfect posture that we see, in yoga magazines and on TV and everyone in their Lululemon pants looking so fantastic. But it's about getting the posture in the best way that feels right in an individual's body in that particular moment. So that might look really different for someone from one day to the next day. And when we're in a posture that feels good and open and we can breathe, then we can start to listen. Oh, okay, what's my hip saying in this moment? What does my hip need? As opposed to telling our hip, you need to look this certain way, which often I think we get in the West in particular, and throughout the world, we get into this kind of ego place with yoga of, I want to look like that magazine, I want to look like, that person on TV, those Lululemon folks. Lululemon's great. They're great fans, and they always look so fancy. But it's more about what feels right in the moment, in the body, and what can we learn from that. So it changes day to day. So when we can listen and hear, what does the body need, as opposed to what do I want the body to do or look like, then things start to change and open up for us.
And how do you coach your people to actually make that change?
That's a great question. I think it's slowing things down. So it's teaching classes that are done at a pace that people can begin to listen, and cueing people to listen again and again, because particularly when we're first learning to do yoga, we're just focusing on, where does this foot go and where does this arm go and where does this head go? And there's all these different appendages that we need to get in the right places.
How do I twist into that position? Yeah.
Exactly. How do I twist that way and stand upside down and all of these things? So it's slowing it down enough that we can first get into the posture and then begin listening to the body. Because if we're moving through the posture so quickly, all we have time to do is figure out how to get in it. And what folks often end up doing is we just tense all of our muscles to get in the right position. But we need to be thinking about what needs to be stretching right now, what needs to be strengthening, and the one that we most often forget is what actually needs to be relaxing. So what do I need to let go of so I can move more fully into this posture? And that's a physical practice, and that's also an emotional and a spiritual practice. What do I need to let go of so I can be more fully present here? And that's one of the things that I find people, myself, and students of mine need to be reminded a lot, is what actually needs to be relaxed. And then things, again, open up a little bit more versus being held really tight in a posture. And when we're tight, the energy doesn't flow through our body. And yoga is a practice to help the energy to move more fully and to help us balance in our bodies. And if we take a really hard approach and we're really tight in yoga, then the energy doesn't flow in the same way, and we don't get the same benefits physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when we approach a practice from that perspective.
So when you're doing classes with a group, do they know that you're focusing on a particular topic? Is it the same group of people in your class? And how long are the sessions? How many sessions will it take for people to be in that healing place?
I think it really depends. It's really individual for each person. I think the style that I teach, it's nice if people come to about 6 sessions, and then you can sink into feeling if it's right for you, because it's a bit of a different way of teaching than say a flow class where you're really moving a lot and you're really working up a sweat. It takes a little bit to let that ego go and think, oh, actually maybe this feels a little bit sloppy compared to what I'm used to, or maybe this feels a little bit unfamiliar. So coming to a number of sessions can help people to then sink into that deeper spiritual, mental, emotional practice. And I'm not saying by any means that that's not happening in other yoga classes. That absolutely is in many classes, and I take many of them too. So yeah, I think probably 6 or so sessions is a nice number for people to get a flavor of it. And I think you asked me another part of that same question too.
I was just wondering if the people know that they're coming to a class that's focused on reducing anxiety or a particular topic.
Sure, yeah. So I do have specific classes that are yoga for anxiety or yoga for depression, yoga for chronic pain, and they're more particularly focused for folks dealing with those experiences. And I like to think of that as more of an experience that someone's living with in a moment, as opposed to saying someone's an anxious person, period. Mm-hmm. It's just you're living with anxiety right now, and a lot of us are living with various levels of anxiety, various levels of stress and depression, and there's specific physical practices that can help those experiences, and then there's also mental, emotional ways that we can work with ourselves in the practices while we're doing the physical practice to help change some of those patterns.
Are there some things that you can talk about that maybe the listener could take away as far as how to reduce some anxiety in the day?
Sure. So the biggest one, and I'll say it and you'll all think, yes, of course, we know this one. We need to breathe deeper. And that's it's a basic one, but we just don't do it, all the time. So it's nice to, if you're sitting at a stoplight, to just take a moment to breathe more deeply into your belly. As soon as we breathe in our chest moves us into our fight or flight response. So that's the response that has us running away from woolly mammoths and tigers and things like that. And we get a lot of oxygen really quickly with those quick, short breaths. But what we're not doing then is the rest from running from the woolly mammoth. So instead of it being, we're running to save our life, and then we're sitting down, and animals will shake, to get the stress out of their bodies and then rest for a while. Most of us were working at deadlines for papers or projects or podcasts. and so we don't have that same moment of, okay, that's done. I'm just going to shake it off and breathe. So we need to create those moments happening in our lives. So at stoplights, for folks that are drivers, that's a good time. On the bus, and getting that breath deeply into the belly, that helps us to move into the rest and digest system. So that helps blood to move to the core of our body, which helps us to digest. It helps us to heal, lowering stress levels, increases those hormones that have us feel good and happy. And the breath is just simply a trigger to help us move into that place. So it's the one part of the system that we can influence. We can't really change our hormone levels in a natural way, and we can't change where our blood's flowing in our body, but the breath is a cue that we can have some influence in that helps all of those other systems to move into that happy, peaceful, restful place.
So remembering to breathe, but breathing properly too. Yes. That's kind of a hard one. You are interested in spirituality and the body. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So yoga for me has helped bridge that gap between spirituality and the body. And growing up in the Christian tradition, for some reason we've kind of moved away from, or maybe we never really claimed that incarnational practice of being fully present in our bodies as spiritual beings. And so for me, it was moving actually away from that tradition and into yoga, into meditation, that allowed me to connect to my body in a way that was an entry for understanding my spiritual life in a deeper way.
And you've taken some steps towards deepening your learning in that area as well. And it was in a setting such as that I ended up meeting you with the yoga. And to me, I've actually met people who are afraid of yoga because they think it's some kind of religion. I'm not sure what you would say about that.
I think yoga, there's a variety of different entry points for people into yoga. There's a lot of different ways that people will engage the practice. So, and it really depends on the teacher that you have. So some people will go simply for the physical practice, for stretching and strengthening, and that's great. You know, it's fantastic to engage yoga in that way. And there's also more of a system of spirituality that's connected to yoga. And again, depending on the teacher that you have, that teacher can help lead you into some of those deeper practices, if that's a direction that you choose to go. Yoga is designed to help people to be able to sit for long periods of time in meditation. So if that's a goal that someone has, to be able to sit for a period of time in meditation, yoga is a great practice for that. If the goal is to reduce your stress and to breathe more deeply and to feel more peaceful, yoga is also a great practice for that. So yoga definitely comes out of a deep and rich spiritual tradition, and I think it's really important to honor that, because so often we can just pick and choose practices that we like and just choose the parts of it that feel good for us. And I think that's an okay thing to do, and I think also to understand that it's deeply rooted in thousands of year-old wisdom is also a really important piece that we acknowledge and we honor and are grateful for when we engage the practice.
I've taken a number of yoga classes over the years, and have really noticed that the teacher makes all the difference. And that there have been times when I've been in classes, like you say, that have just been about the exercise part of it, and that weren't that spirit-filled type of class. And I haven't liked those very well. I remember being at a rec center near my home, and it was a big party. And it was a social club, and it really wasn't what I imagined yoga to be, but it sounds like there are so many different ways that you can engage in this. And for me, I really appreciated this one particular teacher that I met, and she ended up moving to a very fancy yoga place that I couldn't afford to go to. But I absolutely loved her presence and how she held the presence, and how everyone, it felt very grounded, and it just felt like a much richer honoring of that tradition, as you say. Yeah. So the training that you've had, what kinds of things have you done to get you to where you're offering classes?
So I did my initial yoga teacher training in Goa in India, and I did that in 2008. And then after that, I've done yoga therapy training through Mount Royal University in Calgary. So those are my two main yoga trainings. And then I've also been trained in energy healing, which is something that I integrate into most of my classes to help bring greater awareness to that energetic flow that's happening through yoga all of the time. So just putting a bit more concrete language to it so we can focus on it together.
And you've just opened a brand new website hours ago from when we are recording this interview. And I wonder where you see yourself being in the next, 3 years.
That's a fun question, fun and challenging question. I'm really interested in integrating spirituality, mental health, and embodied practices. So with my background in child protection and mental health, and then my experience in teaching yoga and energy healing, I think there's a really we're in a moment in history where we can really start to look at those pieces in a more integrated way. And I think a lot of places are doing that. We hear of somatic therapists that are doing mind-body work, and lots of integrative healing clinics and centers are doing a lot of that work. So I'm really interested in how we can bring that to folks that maybe wouldn't otherwise have access in our typical government systems, So there's a lot of opportunity for us to offer holistic healing practices, physical practices that can help shift some of those mental emotional patterns that we're responding to often with medication, particularly for children, for example, with ADHD. We're responding, first of all, often with medication, as opposed to behavioral changes that we can make, and nutrition changes, and family systems changes. So I'm really interested in working with the whole system that a child or youth is connected in, to help shift the way that everyone is being together. So if we're really stressed as parents and teachers and healthcare practitioners, and then we're bringing a child in that has anxiety or ADHD, it's really hard for them to learn a different way of running their nervous system, because everyone that they're around, the nervous system is revving at a really high rate. So as a society, I think we're in a moment where we can bring that level down and find a bit more ease and a bit more spaciousness. So where am I in 3 years after saying all of those things? I guess that's a little bit about my vision and imagining about how we can create a more peaceful, integrated way of being, where again, yoga is traditionally it's more of a lifestyle. It's not something that you do, in a class for $25 an hour twice a week. Right. It's a way of being. And so it's not that I think everyone needs to adopt all of the principles of yoga necessarily, but I'd like to contribute to people finding ways of being that are more life-giving for them. So when a person comes to me and has anxiety and stress and depression, I want to know what gives them life and what has them feeling most joyful, and what their purpose is, and working on creating ways that they can be in their life that will support those ways of being, so we can be happier. And I know it sounds a bit trivial, but it's really true. It's really true. More joy, more delight, more play in our lives.
And I think that resonates well with me, with the trying to help people deepen relationships through more meaningful conversations with one another, and to have that connection and have that groundedness and that joy and delight. That why do you think we are all so stressed out and anxious?
Another good question. Let's see. I'll take a crack at it anyway. It's a big one, but I'll take a crack at it. I think we lose perspective. I think I lose perspective, and so I can assume that perhaps others do the same. We think things are important that are maybe not as big of a deal. We lose sight of the really of what our key values are. So if a key value for me is joy and delight and deep and meaningful connections, I need to ask myself, when I'm making choices in my life to fill my schedule, does this particular piece contribute to doing that in my life? And if not, why am I doing it? And am I doing it out of guilt, out of obligation? Am I doing it from a heart-filled place of offering something to someone else? It's really different if I don't like doing something, but I'm doing it out of love and compassion, versus I'm doing it out of obligation. So I think we get really stressed because we forget what's important, and we buy cars and houses that we maybe can't afford, and then we work really hard to pay for these things that aren't actually connected to what's really important for us. So I think that's the main thing, is that we lose sight of what we need and what's really important.
That's a great answer on the spot there. Yeah, I think that's true, and we do lose perspective sometimes, and we also get a lot of messages, and this is one of my favorite rants, is that we lose messages about that we are good enough, and we hear over and over again that we're not. And like you say, we have to look a particular way in this yoga outfit, right? Or we have to have all the best gear when we go to a class, because it's all about how we look, not actually what we're doing. And that's very sad, because you're right. We're losing perspective on what we value and what is important. And I know that I try very hard not to use the word should, because I heard somewhere that the word should is somebody else's value system. It means you're living for someone else's value system if you say, I should be doing blah, blah, blah. Well, why? What is the purpose behind that, and what is the vision? So that's that all ties nicely together with. So you want to be doing more of this work in the next few years. You've opened your website, and who are the people that are coming to you? Where are you finding people to come? And I'm just curious about what kinds of people are coming to find you.
So anyone that's interested in hearing from their body and getting clearer with messages that their body is giving them. So that could be someone that has chronic pain. That could be someone that lives with anxiety. I'm also wanting to work more and more with families, so working with the whole family system. So it could be a child who has ADHD. It could be a child who is having difficulty in school, lots of bullying happening, and I don't even really like the word bullying, but I could get onto a whole other conversation about that. But aggressive behaviors, I really believe that for everyone, and particularly for children, children communicate what they need through their behaviors. And so when we as adults, as parents, as caregivers, can spend more time listening and looking and asking important questions about what's actually being communicated, it can help with that healing. It can help with changing behaviors at a more long-term sustainable level, as opposed to Band-Aid solutions. And that's true for children, and it's also true for adults. Asking ourselves, why am I eating a second tub of ice cream today? Why am I doing that? And knowing ways to not move into guilt, and to not move into beating ourselves up around doing those patterns that we've developed to cope, because we've all developed various different things that we do that aren't life-giving for us in the long term, but in the short term it meets a need. And so I'm interested in working with anyone who has a deeper inquiry into themselves, into hearing from their bodies, into listening in a really deep level through their body to a soul level, really, and moving, shifting some of those patterns to move to a more life-giving place with a fuller life of joy and delight. That's a big word I'm using a lot lately, is delight.
And so if you have one last thing you want to leave with the person listening today, what would that be?
That's another big question. Last thing. I think it's to write a list of things that you love doing. Things that bring you joy, things that make you happy. And if you sit down to do that list and you find that that's hard to do, that's okay. Pay attention for the next week about what places are you in where it's easy to breathe, where it's easy to smile, where it's easy to connect, where you feel like your best self, and just do those things. I don't think that it's rocket science. Sometimes we feel like, changing myself has to be like hard work and it's difficult, and I don't think that's always true. It's following what makes us happy. And the business that I'm just starting and the website that I've just put up in time for this very podcast, it's called Kinchara, and it comes from two Greek words, kenosis, which is self-emptying, and chara, which is delight. And for me, that sums up some of the work that I want to be doing. It's that emptying ourselves of ego and of attachment, and doing it in a way that's delightful, in a way that that makes us happy.
So if people want to find you, they can go to kenchara.ca, and any other places they can find you? Or is that the best place?
That's the best place. I can be emailed at christina@kenchara.ca as well.
Perfect. So we'll put all that on the website at communicationdiva.com, and we'll have information about Christina there. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way over here and have an interview. It's been lovely to have a chat.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
Okay, so there you have Christina Kinch, and please check out her site at kenchara.ca. That's KENCHARA.ca, and see what Christina is up to. And you might get some ideas. She might have some information that you can use even if you're nowhere near our lovely city of Vancouver. There may be things that you can do to help yourself breathe a little more easily with the stress and anxiety that I know is so pervasive. All right, I wanted to tell you a couple of things that are exciting that are happening, and one of them is that I am going to be the host of a brand new podcast that is coming up soon. This is not my personal endeavor, but I have been asked to be the host by Influence Publishers, and I am going to be hosting the Authors of Influence Radio. And I'm not exactly sure when the first episode is going to be launched, but I will keep you informed of that. And I'm going to be interviewing authors who have written books that are having quite a far reach and are going all over the place. And most of the books are inspirational books that are stories or guides to help you with particular items, particular things that you might be experiencing that the authors have been experiencing. So this is a chance to get to know the person behind the writing a little bit, and I'm very excited to be doing these interviews and to be working with Influence Publishing. And I am also just in the beginning stages of writing my own book. I've had an ebook out for a little while, and I am now going to be working on taking some of that information and expanding upon it greatly and putting out a book of my own. And I'm not sure what that's going to be called quite yet, but that book is due to be launched in spring of 2015. So I will keep you posted on that. A couple of other things. If you are thinking of getting into podcasting yourself, check out Libsyn and the promo code that we have that will allow you to host your own podcast for a couple of months for free and get a bit of a discount there. There are a number of things over on the products and services sections of the website that can help you with getting started. I wanted to talk a tiny bit here about something that I am offering for the entire month of July 2014. It is my birthday month. It is Canada Day, July 1st as well. My birthday is the 31st. And because of that, I decided to celebrate all month with a form of Graceonomics. And I did a post just before this episode. If you look on the website, there is a blog post that talks a little bit about the idea of Graceonomics and the idea of pay what you want, pay what you can. So I am offering for the entire month, starting tomorrow, July 1st, the Public Speaking Success, the Communication Diva's Guide to Presenting with Confidence. This is a 5-part digital download audio course that can help you to make your next presentation shine. And this is almost 3 hours worth of content. There are activities, there are stories, and this is normally a $97 product, and I am offering it at whatever you want to pay me for it for. So starting July 1st, you can, until the 31st of July, you can go to the products page, or you can go to www.gumroad.com/PUBSS. That's SS as in speaking success. and you can go to the website, to that site, and you will see that the cost for the item is $0+. So I'm hoping that you will make some kind of a donation. This took a long time to put this together, and I believe that it is full of valuable information, but you decide what you would like to pay for it, and I ask in return that you review it, you send me a note, you give me a testimonial, you tell me how you used it, what you used it for, or whether you liked it or whether you didn't like it. I'd like to hear from you on how it worked for you. So for the month, it's my happy birthday present to me, to you. So there you go. Thank you very much for listening to Communication Diva. I look forward to talking to you again next time. This is Jenn Swanson, and see you soon.